The content in your video is so much more important than the length of your video. YouTube used to have long videos that dominated the space, but now you see YouTubers like Logan Paul that are pivoting to making shorter videos. You see someone like David Dobrik who has millions of subscribers making short videos all the time. So if you want to make short videos, how do you do that well? Hey guys, welcome to the channel where we're all about building a community of people that are looking for motivation, support, and guidance in living out our esports dreams. My name is Sam, aka Just Casual, and let's jump into the question from Winston. So Winston asks, is it possible to create a compelling story/narrative in a mid-form duration between 3 to 5 minutes? If so, what are your steps into ensuring that the narrative doesn't get lost within the small period of time? So my quick answer to this is, what's the focus? What's the story structure? And what's gotta go? All right, so let's start with what the focus is. When you go into making a video or into your video edits, you got to figure out, like, what is the story I'm trying to tell? What is the focus? What is the most intriguing, most interesting thing about this video? And why are people going to click on that, right? Once you figure that out and you know the story that you have to build with, it's a lot easier to make sure that there's not much fluff in the way that will bloat your video and make it longer. Another thing you want to think about is when you're telling the story, what do you want the viewer to feel? What do you want them to get from this video? And that's going to also help you shape the story the way that you want to, and that will be successful. So once you figure that stuff out, like I said, you can take out the bloat, you can take out all the extra b-roll, you can take out the storylines that don't really matter, that don't focus on the most interesting point, and build around that. So let's go into an example. Let's say you're doing a Fortnite vlog following a player in 5 rounds in a tournament that they made an amazing comeback to, qualify for the next tournament. So when I think about that, the most intriguing part why someone might want to click on this video is because they know that player and there's a crazy thing that ends up happening. He makes this insane comeback that no one expected. So when I think about what I want the audience to feel, I want them to feel maybe that pressure and that hopelessness the player was experiencing during the match. Feeling the weight of all the odds are against him, and he has to really clutch the last few rounds if he wants to even qualify for the next tournament. So then that's where you take all the content that you have and start building around that focus. Next, you want to think about the story structure. Now, every story you've probably seen follows some similar structure, and these things have been figured out for quite some time, right? And if you go on Google, you can see so many different examples of different story structures for The Lord of the Rings, your favorite movie, different series, all this kind of stuff. But it all pretty much boils down to 3 things. You have the setup, the conflict, and the resolution, right? You're setting up the scene to get everyone up to par and to care about the protagonist or the main characters, to go into conflict, which builds up pressure. You need to figure out how this ends, how they're going to overcome that conflict. You want to root for the good guys or the main characters, and then how they get over that conflict, and then wrap up the movie or video or whatever the story in a way that sends the message that you're trying to get across. So then with these 3 things, you really have to think about, like, how long are you going to spend on it, all of this, what kind of content you're going to do for each of those parts, and then most importantly, especially on YouTube, you want to figure out how you're going to build the pressure and the intrigue throughout this whole thing, right? If you're talking about like a full-length feature film in a movie, people have bought the ticket, they bought the DVD, they've already rented the movie on their TV or whatever, and they're committed, and they're probably not going to leave the movie or stop the movie. However, on YouTube, where people are, they see all the suggested video, they pull their phone out, there's other notifications on Twitter and stuff that are bothering them, they're more likely to leave when there's a boring or dull moment or when they're taken out of the story. So it's really, really important to figure out, like, how you're going to build the pressure and how you're going to build the intrigue throughout this whole video. And I would say you do it as fast as possible. Like, you get into the pressure as fast as possible, and then you continue holding the pressure with twists, turns, whatever else. Or like flashy animations, whatever you need to do to keep their intrigue onto the story. Okay, so going into the example of the Fortnite tournament again. For the setup, I keep it like really short. I maybe only talk about the tournament implication, like what's on the line, maybe the excitement of the player going in, maybe feeling overconfident, just to make sure that when he starts doing poorly, like it really hurts, or you're really invested, or you want to see, like, I know how this story ends because I saw it on my feed or I watched the live stream, but I want to feel it and like see how we overcame that. For the conflict, I might use gameplay and caster commentary, and things to just make sure that it's emphasized like the bad start that this player is having. And then for the resolution, I'd probably throw more gameplay in, maybe some player interviews to end the whole scene and to like get some caster commentator over it, just to like really focus on the last 2 rounds of victory and like closing out the story as quick as possible. So the last thing I want to talk about is what's gotta go. You made your first pass, second pass, third pass, and you're looking at your video and it's like 12 minutes long, 10 minutes long, 7 minutes long, and maybe that's an okay length, but you realize like, hey, this feels slow. Right? Or like I get bored in it, or something just like doesn't feel right, or it's actually not that interesting, especially if you looked at the footage a ton. Like the footage gets boring, I get that, but you really realize like, hey, there's too much in here and the story is getting lost. I'm trying to do too many things. That's when you start trimming the fat. I would say the fat is anything that really doesn't build to the focus of the video. Like there's a lot of things that you think are important at the beginning, and then you realize, wait, this doesn't add anything to the video. This is just like a cool side conversation that happened, but it has nothing to do with the comeback, right? So I think examples of this might like be the B-roll that you do for the player entering the hotel, or like the extra interview of like getting to know the player personality a little too much maybe, because you already have footage that shows that he's like really like excited about this tournament. I would even say fat is when you have an interview that's 30 seconds long that you can trim down to 10 seconds long to get to like the main focus. So it's not even just like extra scenes, it's like can be within a scene. The next thing that might have to go are things that are romantic, things that you have an emotional connection to, but again, don't add to the focus of the story. So I think this could be like, oh, he had a really great headshot in round 1, but again, the focus of the story is like how he did horribly in round 1 and 2 and his comeback from 3 to 5. Or, you know, I would say this is the really nice B-roll that you took, like going through the hotel or the player coming into the venue, but again, like it's too long and doesn't add to the story. The other thing I want to think about is being creative. There's creative ways to cut down on content or cut out content or make things shorter. What if instead of starting the video with like, hey, he's coming to the venue, this is his name, this is the event, blah, blah, a minute passes and then you get into the gameplay. What if you just started the video after round 2 and just filled like the context with text, like a black screen with text on it that has commentators going like, oh, player 1, 2, 3 is doing poorly and there's no way he's gonna make it back. And then suddenly that's like 10 seconds long versus a minute and a half or 2 minutes of setup time. So I think there's definitely many ways to be creative in figuring out like how you want to trim down your story. But it's not easy, it's really hard. And I think this is where you can look to examples that you've seen from other editors, other movies, other YouTubers, all these kind of things to get really creative on how to like trim it down. Last thing I want to talk about with what's gotta go is maybe after you've done this all, you realize you have to redo it. Like you have to scrap the whole thing. Maybe the focus should more be on the downfall rather than the comeback. Maybe that's the most intriguing part. And you spend 4 minutes out of the 5 minutes of the video showing like the 2 rounds and the intensity and like the trauma and like the depression of the player, what they're going through, right? Maybe that's the most intriguing part of the story. And maybe if you focus on something smaller or something different, it'll help you if you have restrictions on keeping content like shorter. I find this happening to me a lot when I do like social media edits that can only be a minute long or a minute and a half long on Twitter. So don't forget, you need to figure out what's the focus, what's the story structure, and what's gotta go. What do you think are the biggest difficulties when pulling off shorter pieces of content? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you're enjoying these Just Ask episodes, don't forget to click on the next video right there. And thank you so much for watching. And don't forget, if you have any questions, just ask. Bye.